I don't have a license right now. You see the little card holder that normally goes in here on your big wallet? Yeah, I lost that, and in that was my license, my ID, and a majority of my bank cards. And as a result, I will now consequently have to venture into the deepest, darkest pits of hell and back, also known as Home Affairs, to try and kind of get everything back. Despite this, I could probably still jump in the Hilux and drive to town, run my errands, and generally just get on with my life without the slightest fear of legal consequence. And that is because my other, slightly more blue license has the power to make any traffic cop in South Africa have a sudden and very severe amnesia. So let's talk about that. Let's have a conversation about the massive traffic cop corruption issue in South Africa right now and why it should be as talked about as the other massive corruption issue facing our law enforcement nowadays. The biggest, most prevalent issue with traffic cop corruption in South Africa is bribery, something that has become so widespread and popular that it's actually kind of became a bit of a meme in South African society. According to the ISS, approximately 870,000 South Africans were asked for bribes from traffic cops in 2024. This means that roughly 2% of the South African population were asked for bribes by traffic cops in just the past year, in just 2024 alone. I mean, like, how are we supposed to take law enforcement seriously in this country when so many people, 2% of the population, were given the option to pay money in order to avoid facing legal consequences for breaking the laws on our roads? It is just absolute insanity. But wait, there's more, because at least 75% of those 870,000 South Africans, so a majority of those people, actually ended up paying up for those bribes. What makes this number even worse when you think about it is that traffic cops will ask for bribes for some of the most minor infractions on the road, stuff like expired, missing or invalid license discs, illegal tint or modification, driving without a license, and even something that is not an infraction, something as simple as getting a license, has turned into something that can only be possible through bribery. I mean, we know these stories. It is sometimes impossible, especially in small towns, to obtain a learner's permit and a license without paying up a little something. I mean, this is commonplace. We live in these places. We know how these things work. But then if you think about it, the legitimate fines that you could face for such small infractions can range anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 rands. So then what is a little 50 bucks when the real fine could quite literally financially wreck you for the rest of the month or the rest of the next few months based on how your finances looked? I mean, bribes are a really attractive thing. You can pay a small amount of money to make a big amount of money in the form of fines kind of go away. So why would you not comply? Another very common issue with traffic cop corruption is the issue of extortion. This is where a traffic cop or an actual cop will threaten you with stuff like false charges, imprisonment, or impounding your vehicle, unless of course you pay them money. I mean, we know this one pretty well. You get pulled over, you get searched, and all of a sudden there is a massive problem, and now you're being threatened with 5 years in jail, and the only way to make things right is to buy some overpriced cold drink, some cold drink that is worth 100 rands somehow. These are things that are very prevalent in our society. These are things that we see and experience each and every day. But let's look at some real world examples of motorists being extorted in order to kind of gain a better understanding of this issue. Last year, 39-year-old Dumelo Dao, a traffic cop in the JB Markets local municipality, was arrested after impounding a truck because the driver allegedly had outstanding fines. He then demanded money from the driver in order to release his truck. That's the first example. Let's look at the second one. In Bloemfontein, a traffic cop pulled over a woman after she had overtaken a truck that was traveling in the yellow line in an area where there was a double barrier solid line. So kind of those cheeky little overtakes that we've all done where a truck is going like 20 kilometers an hour in a 100 kilometers per hour zone. It's in the yellow line. The barrier line doesn't really matter because there is space there to pass, so you obviously pass. Imagine doing that and then getting pulled over and then getting told that you're gonna get arrested unless you send a 500 Rand e-wallet to the officer's personal number. Just absolute insanity. Now, while in both instances the corrupt individuals, the corrupt traffic cops involved were arrested, just think about the amount of incidents that happen on a daily basis that are not reported like these ones are. How many times have you been asked for a bribe for a minor infraction and actually paid up and kept your mouth shut? That's what I was talking about when I was saying that oftentimes it is just way easier to just pay the bribe and go on with your day than refusing to pay the bribe and having to go through the legal rigmarole that this cop is going to put you through just because you didn't buy them an overpriced cold drink. Traffic cops are able to abuse their authority and abuse their role in order to extort bribes out of desperate people that they have targeted and that they have taken advantage of. Unfortunately, that is the dark reality of the bribery situation in terms of traffic cops in the country. According to salary experts, an entry-level traffic cop with around 1 to 3 years experience on the job will earn a salary of around 12 to 15,000 rands, while a more senior official with over 8 years of experience will earn a maximum salary of around 42,000 rands per month. So for the work that they're doing, their pay is relatively low. I mean, it is not the worst salary you could earn in South Africa considering the workload, but it is relatively low generally speaking. So bribery can be a viable source of extra income. And obviously, if you're a senior official making over 40k a month, that's decent money. You don't need to take bribes at that point, but it can be very appealing for those junior officials. If you're making 12, 15k a month, there is a lot that needs to go into that, especially if you're taking care of a family, a wife, a household that depends on you. Taking bribes is going to be very tempting indeed. And with the average bribe being around 100 to 200 rand, and considering the fact that traffic cops do like dozens of stops per day, you can kind of see then that they can actually end up doubling their salary, like adding another salary on top of their original salary just by taking bribes. So it is something that is very obvious to do. It's a very obvious thing to do, especially, like I said, if you're in that entry-level role. I mean, this is why bribery is so commonplace nowadays, is that it is just easy money. I mean, it would be stupid in a way to not take bribes as a traffic cop, especially considering that you could specifically target road users that are known for having roadworthiness issues, people like taxi drivers, people like truck drivers. In these situations, when you pull these guys over, a bribe is basically guaranteed in most cases. And yeah, that is one of the main reasons why bribery is so rampant, is just because it is genuinely a good source of income. As we know all too well, corruption and South African law enforcement go together like peanut butter and jelly. You simply can't have one without the other. From the literal Minister of Police being allegedly involved with criminal syndicates, to your local traffic cop asking you for an overpriced cold drink, corruption is just rampant throughout the entire police structure, from the very bottom all the way up to the very top. Corruption reaching this high up in the law enforcement hierarchy is actually a massive problem, because you end up with a situation where everyone is corrupt and no one is able to hold other corrupt individuals to account because they themselves are also corrupt. This is where you kind of have the entire structure kind of falling apart and bursting at the seams in terms of corruption. It's just because no one's there to hold anyone accountable. A great example of how high-reaching corruption can actually end up creating a bit of a Wild West scenario in law enforcement is the formation of the Hawks. And basically, if you don't know, Hawks are an organization formed to investigate all types of government corruption and general naughtiness. They were formed as a replacement of the Scorpions. The reason why the Scorpions were dismantled and replaced by the Hawks is because the then police commissioner Jackie Celebi was actually being investigated by the Scorpions for corruption. I mean, this is a perfect example of how high-level law enforcement can actually protect itself when the excrement hits the proverbial fan. There is no one to hold anyone accountable, and when someone does try to hold someone accountable, they kind of get swept under the rug, dismantled, and replaced with this newer shiny thing that actually ends up being way more reliant on the actual police structure. But that's another different story for now. I'm not gonna get into the can of worms that is the Scorpions and the Hawks. That is not what this video is about. This is about motorists in South Africa, so let's move on before I spiral. But my point is, if the leaders of South African law enforcement can create entirely new organizations just to stop investigations against their corrupt actions, what makes you think that your local traffic cop can't ask you for a bribe to make some extra cash? The corruption goes all the way to the top, and there is very little we can do to stop it. The prevalence of corruption in every level of law enforcement in South Africa means that there is also a fundamental lack of accountability and oversight. This can lead to corrupt individuals facing little consequences for their actions and actually ending up still being able to keep their jobs and live their lives as normal even after they've been found out. This is made worse by the fact that there is a huge amount of nepotism involved in police and traffic cop recruitment, leading to people with criminal records being able to get jobs as law enforcement officials. So yeah, it's obvious then why corruption becomes so rampant in the system. It's basically just rubbish in, rubbish out. Criminals in, corruption out as a result. That's just what's gonna end up happening, unfortunately. Something that makes this even worse is that, yes, at the lower levels, there's nepotism in the recruitment. So corruption makes its way up, and that way kind of creeps its way up from the lower levels, kind of trickling up into the higher levels. But also it rains down from the higher levels because the appointment of senior leaders, the appointment of the leadership of law enforcement in this country is also often political. So on the low level, you have nepotism involved in recruitment, and on the high level, you have politics being involved in the appointment of senior individuals. This leads to a situation where senior leaders are frequently churned out, which obviously leads to a lack of direction. I mean, if there are new leaders frequently just kind of coming in, going out, coming in, going out, there isn't going to be a set direction that law enforcement is going to go to, because the direction that it was going to go to kind of goes away with the leader that was taking it in that direction, and then it gets swept into a new direction by this leader and then changed out, and the cycle continues. This is a breeding ground for corruption. And like most things in this country, the appointment of these roles is not really ever based on competence. It is always just politically motivated, which is something that just fosters a lot of corruption. All these factors that I have listed lead to an environment where corruption and bribery can thrive and become a part of the workplace culture. A place where corruption is not only commonplace but widely accepted. So yes, that was it for my video on traffic cop corruption in South Africa. If something happens to me, please know I love my life very much. I did not have any kind of those thoughts. You know what thoughts I'm talking about, and this video was a joke. This entire video was a joke. I am not being serious. please don't come after me if you're planning to come after me. Anyway, no, yeah, I really enjoyed diving into this issue. I think it's something that is very important to kind of look into with everything that's going on with the General Mkhwanazi case and the Senzo Mchunu case. I thought it was interesting to kind of look at another aspect of law enforcement corruption, alleged corruption, I should say. And until the next one, goodbye.